في أكبر الكتب.
Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lambcast. This is episode 819, and I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. Pretty much since his last film, Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's next film has been highly anticipated. He's tackled a classic from ancient Greece that's taught in high schools and colleges today and is the basis of many of the myths and legends that we have from ancient times, the Odyssey. At the start of the year, I joked it was everybody's most anticipated film, but I'm not sure it was ever really a joke. As we got closer to the film's release and we saw a couple of trailers, there were some warning signs that suggested maybe Nolan had gone off the trail and pursued something in a manner that was beneath him. Turns out most of those fears were exaggerated, and it looks like The Odyssey will be one of the major films of the year and a contender for numerous awards. But we may be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Let's see if this week's guests feel as enthusiastic about it as the rest of the world seems to be. For her, The Odyssey is old school stuff. She teaches it in her high school English classes and knows it backwards and forwards. So if we get lost, if we conflate names, or simply want to pick on her, we'll be calling on Lisa Leaheey.
Anytime. Feel free to pick on me as much as you'd like.
The first person to request a spot on this episode was Nicole Ayers, one of the lambs who's always been dependable, but in summertime is also ubiquitous.
Glad to be here. Odysseus once said, "Fortune favors the brave," and I'm glad that everyone who worked on this film was brave enough to make it.
And of course, if I'm ever short for a guest, I have to look no further than my reliable third arm, Howard Casner, who's always ready to talk about a movie, even if we're not exactly sure which way he's going to go with it.
Yeah. Hi.
The Odyssey is a 2026 epic fantasy action film written and directed by Christopher Nolan. It's an adaptation of Homer's ancient Greek epic poem, The Odyssey. And Matt Damon stars as Odysseus, the Greek king of Ithaca. And the film chronicles his long and perilous journey home after the Trojan War and his encounters with mythical beings as he attempts to reunite with his wife Penelope, who's played by Anne Hathaway. The ensemble cast includes Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, Samantha Morton, Zendaya, and Charlize Theron. We're going to start with our general spoiler-free thoughts, and then we'll pick out some things that people might be interested in talking about in more detail before we give you our final recommendations. So, Lisa, let's start with you. Since you know the poem so well and have taught it in class, what did you think of this version of the poem and the classic work and your general thoughts?
I'm pretty satisfied with it. I really, really enjoyed it. I am not able to see IMAX films because they make me queasy. So I did the best I can. My local theater has what they call X Plus. So it's got, like super digital laser screen and super surround sound and subwoofers under the seat. And so, I do the best I can. Would I like to see it the way Nolan intends it? Absolutely. But I can't because it makes me queasy. So, I'm thrilled for many reasons, but my most specific reason is that I absolutely can show this to freshmen because there's no nudity, there's no overtly gratuitous sex scenes, which I was really worried about based on the literature book versions of the play, and I worried a bit about Circe and Calypso, and I'm pleased to know that I definitely can show this. What I'm interested in is how certain sequences have been combined with others, how some have been eliminated entirely. I think that'll make for very interesting conversations with kids who have read it for the first time. I really like a certain number of elements that we'll get into later on, because they're behind the spoiler wall for me. But as much as I was a little skeptical about certain actors and certain roles, most notably Matt Damon, I think he did a pretty decent job with this. It's no secret that I don't watch trailers and I don't read information about the films before I go in. So I was really delighted to see certain individuals show up in certain characters, most notably John Leguizamo as Eumaeus, who I think did an outstanding job. And I was pretty happy with it. I'm very, very entertained by what Nolan does, no matter what Nolan does. And I'm excited to break this one down for the next 20 years that I'll probably still be teaching.
Well, I'm glad that you have a future with it and can show it in class. There used to be a rule when my wife was a teacher that she could show anything that was G or PG in class and it wouldn't be a problem. And I thought, okay, let's get Jaws in there because, of course, it ducked the PG-13 category by several years, but she couldn't get away with that. It is a violent film, but it's not the kind of violence that you see in a lot of films, although there are some gruesome moments.
That's true. And there is a sequence in there, dealing with Cersei where I don't know how I'm going to approach that. I do think I'm going to need to give them a bit of a warning, but I'm sure we'll get into that in more detail later on.
Okay, well, let's skip the classroom discussion for the moment and let's turn to Nicole and see what Nicole thought of the film.
I too was pretty satisfied with the film. Going in, I didn't have a lot of expectations in terms of my movie going experience because I unfortunately don't have an IMAX theater in my city, which I find strange, but that's what it is. I wish the Franklin Institute, although they're not a movie theater, they have shown movies in the past, particularly like one of the later Harry Potter films. They have a dome shaped like theater where they show a lot of their science programming or what have you. That I think that lends itself to like a potential like cool immersive experience. So I don't know why they didn't pick the film up, but whatever. There is an IMAX theater like in another county in my state. So I may or may not see it again. I would like to see the movie in IMAX, but I'm satisfied with the super screen option that one of the theaters in my area had. So I'm happy about that. There were some actors that I knew were going to be in it, and then some other ones that I was surprised to see. And I didn't anticipate enjoying Himesh Patel as much as I did because I'm not that familiar with him, but I really liked him in this movie. So I enjoyed his performance. I think the movie was a bit longer than I anticipated, although I probably should have expected it to be long given that it's the Odyssey. But I saw a late show, and when we left and looked at the time, it was like, okay, we're now in the early morning of like the following day. So we weren't expecting that, but I'm happy with it. And people were clapping as well when it was over in the theater that I was in. So I imagine they were happy so, too.
All right. Well, we've had a little bit of IMAX talk. I didn't ask for that specifically, but I'm ready to hear some more about it. And I have a couple of comments to make too. But let's hear what Howard has to say about the film first.
Well, I'm going to be a lot of fun on this podcast today. I thought it was terrible. I think it's one of the worst films I've seen in a while. For me, nothing worked in it. And there are a lot of reasons why I think so. I don't know how much detail we want to go into now, but I thought it was cheesy at times without it wanting to be cheesy. Because I love cheesiness in the right context. I thought the special effects were mixed. Sometimes they were, it was obvious they were green screening it. Other times not. I have no idea why he made this film. I don't, I'm completely lost. I don't know what he was trying to do or what drew him to it or why he wanted to do this.
I always thought that adding Howard to the show would be fun. And this is going to be a perspective that is vastly different from most of them. Although I've seen a few other opinions that are similar to it. Unlike unlike Lisa, I do check around a little bit, not so much ahead of time, but after I've seen the movie to see what other people are saying about it. And have given it quite a bit of praise, but there are a few people who are critical, especially of the changes that have been made from the original poem. And there are people who get into the weeds on those sorts of things. I've got to be honest with you. I read the Odyssey and the Iliad back in high school, must have been the 10th grade. Uh, and I have very little memory of it. I just know that that's where became familiar with several myths and legends. And I think we also read a whole bunch of other mythology from both the Greek and the Roman eras. And so it's easy for me to run it all together. That was 50 years ago. And, I was not as attentive as a student as I might have been on some things. So I don't have a lot of comparative terms to make about the poem. I do think that there are a few things about it that are problematic, but certainly not to the level that Howard is suggesting here. I will mention the IMAX dilemma here. I've read that it's only available in IMAX 70 millimeter in about 30 films in the country, or 30 theaters in the country. So it's not just IMAX, but IMAX 70 millimeter that is the format that Nolan says is the preferred format. And of course, it's the one that's most restricted. The IMAX theaters, there are a lot more IMAX theaters that are playing the film, so it's not just limited to the 40, but they don't have the 70 millimeter version of it. How different those are going to be, I'll have a little bit of comparison because I did go to a 70 millimeter screening, not an IMAX 70 millimeter screening, but I know it was on film and not digital because there was a nice scratch down the middle of the film the whole time, 3 hours of it. And I thought, man, this film is brand new, and already the projector has created a flaw in the film. It's a little frustrating when you're seeing it on opening day, and it's already got the damage that you remember from seeing in 70s films that have been played for, 30 weeks.
That's inexcusable.
It was very frustrating to me. I didn't understand why that. I mean, like I said, you could tell though it was film as a result
Oh
because
my God. But
that's not
still,
going to show up.
you can't show that. And people need to be refunded for that. I mean, it's one thing in the 70s. Now, come on. That's not okay.
Yeah, I don't know how you address those issues. Like I said, that they are 70 millimeters screening on a film is rare these days, and so it's one of those things that you have to. I'm going to live with it. However, I am going to see it in IMAX next week, so I'll be able to compare a little bit. Although I'm not sure I'll remember enough to be able to say, "Oh, the framing on this was so much better. The lighting here was spectacular." I'm closer to Lisa and Nicole than I am to Howard. I like the film quite well. I think it's spectacular. I didn't have the problems that Howard sees in the special effects. I thought most of them worked really well. There were maybe a couple that were a little awkward or old-fashioned, but I didn't see those as being particularly problematic since we're dealing with a fantasy film. Some of the fantasy elements are going to be a little, I don't want to say cringy, but they're a little obvious that you have something that's not tangible, although most of it seemed quite tangible. I think the 90% of the stuff on the boats is actually in a boat, but the ocean itself is probably where the CG comes in. There's a lot of stuff in it that I think looks very effective and comes across well. And Howard says he's not sure why the film is being made. I think the idea of bringing this classic story to a new generation is probably the big reason. And there are themes in this film that will probably be important to talk about. Some of the themes might be different than what was originally imagined or what people might have originally gotten from the the poem, but I found a couple of things very interesting, and I enjoyed the concept of one of those themes quite a bit. I thought the actors did a good job. I appreciated most of them. There are exceptions, but those are things that we can talk about as we get going. So I'm generally positive on the film, and strongly positive. I'm a little surprised. I may be the most positive on the show so far. I'm more than satisfied. I was very pleased with the film, and like I said, I'm ready to see it again. So that's the way we're going to go. Um, let's since we've mentioned several elements here, and we've just been dealing with general thoughts, some of those elements have come up. Uh, I wanted to start with something that Nicole mentioned, and that's the length of the film. It is a 3-hour film, and Nicole was surprised that it was that long. Nicole, did it seem arduous to you to sit there for 3 hours?
It did not. So it didn't feel like it was long until we left and looked at the time and saw that, like, oh, we're in another day now, like a whole other day. So it was that long. Who knew? But I will say there was a guy on my left side who was sleeping um during a portion of the film. I don't know if he had a long day or not, or if it was longer than he anticipated or what have you. But he was with a group of men who took up the row we were sitting in and the majority of the back row. All men, all Indian men that came in as a group. Everyone else besides him, they were awake. So I imagine, I
I'm
don't know.
going to ask the question that probably is on some people's mind. Was he an older gentleman?
Um, I'll give like middle aged
Okay,
to
yeah, okay.
maybe.
I,
Not
you know, I find
not young,
myself in those
not young.
situations. I get drowsy occasionally during a movie, especially a long movie. I did not have that problem in this particular film. It's terrible at home. If I get into a movie and I'm watching it for half an hour, 40 minutes, there will be a lull at some point. And if I don't have a soda or an almond or something to get me going again, it would be very easy for me to pass out during a movie and feel like I should stop. But in a
That makes
theater,
sense.
it's a little bit rarer, but it has happened occasionally. I slept through almost all of Moana 2 2 years ago, and I just couldn't keep awake. I paid for a 90-minute nap.
Sometimes I think it was the recliner seats that did it to him, because he reclined his seat. Were you in Moana in a reclined seat?
Well, the seats are reclinable, but
I definitely don't think it was the seats that put me
I
to sleep in Moana
rarely
too.
I rarely recline my seat.
Okay.
I'm one of those people
I
that
don't.
sits
I
in the
I
seat.
don't do it either.
Uh, Occasionally I've done it, like if I'm having some problem with my foot or my leg, which I occasionally have, I might put up the footrest a little bit, but I never recline all the way because holy criminy, that's just an invitation to take a nap. I don't understand how people do that.
Neither
Uh,
do I. And it's always uncomfortable for me. I've tried it and then I put the seat back down because I'm like, I can't watch the movie. Like, it's just
yeah.
weird to me. And speaking of uh, feet, and it, like, I currently have a foot injury and I still did not refine
Well, good
my
for you.
seat.
I'm all for that. Lisa, did you feel like the film was too long?
Not at all. Um, and I remember, one of my favorite apps as a movie fan is the Run P app, because, it tracks how long the movie is. It'll tell you whether there's stuff in or after the credits. And it gives you pee times when it's safe, quote unquote, to go run to the bathroom. Oh, it's the greatest thing there is.
What?
It's been around for I think almost over 10 years at this point. But they go see the films very early on, and they find, depending on the length of the film. So for the Odyssey, I think there were 4 P times. And the idea is like, hey, this is a conversation where we can summarize it really well for you. They time out the P time. So they'll let you know, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And they'll say, here's what you're missing. And you get a quick little summary.
Wow.
And even though I am hard pressed to ever leave the theater for any reason, I always track it because I'm interested to see which P times they've selected. It's just a quirk of mine. And I
Now, see,
remember, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I remember, you know, seeing Oppenheimer and barely making it. And I was fine for the Odyssey. I mean, I knew full well that it was, if you're going to do it right, it needs to be long. I like that Nolan has integrated a lot of elements of the Iliad here. Actually, I don't want to say a lot of some ending elements to provide context. And I think he's done some interesting things with it. I thought that, you know, it was an appropriate length, especially for cutting out two, three potentially adventures that Odysseus has on his journey home. You know, even eliminating certain sections, it's still almost 3 hours long. I mean, Oppenheimer is longer than this film by about, you know, 9 or 8 minutes, but I knew it going in and I was ready for it. And I didn't feel that it was long. At no point did I think, oh, get on with it already. I've looked at some reviews afterwards that say, oh, you know, the first hour is very talky. Well, yeah. So is the poem. I mean, he's decided to include elements from book one, which we are dealing with, you know, Telemachus's coming of age and how he's figuring things out, in addition to just Odysseus's journey home. So you're going to have elements that are sort of contextual. They've completely eliminated Odysseus and Phaeacia. Like King Alcinous is nowhere to be found. None of that has been put in here. They have taken Odysseus telling his story and they've put it to Calypso. They've eliminated the Lotus Eaters and they've put that to Calypso. Okay, I can get around that. In fact, those are conversations I can have with freshmen and say, well, what do you think? Why do this? Does it work? Does it not work? I'm sure Howard will tell us how it doesn't work. The idea is, you know, I didn't feel this. I didn't have people in my theater who felt this. At least there was nobody sleeping near me. I actually was delighted by the fact that I saw a lot of young people in my theater. It wasn't just, you know, people who I can point out as teachers or people I can point out as, you know, I'm here to see a classic film. The last time this film was made, this story was adapted, was 30 years ago with Armand Desante. And that's the version I've been using, good old TNT. And that's 3 hours because that was a mini series, you know. So I think this is pretty well put together. I recline my seat, I always will. But when things get interesting, I find myself sitting up and sitting forward. And yeah, while there were P times and they were good P times, I didn't need a single one of them.
Howard, nothing is short when you find what you're watching to be interminable. So I'm going to assume that you thought it was too long.
Well, no, I didn't think it was too long, but I did think it was interminable. I mean, I do agree that if you're going to tell the whole story, you can't tell it in a short period of time. But it was still interminable. It's not the length that made it interminable. It's everything else that made it interminable, whatever that word is for me.
Okay. Yeah, well, frequently I'm of the notion that there's something that could be taken out of the film that make it move a little more quickly. Most films that are 2 hours and 40 minutes could be 2 hours and 10 or 15 minutes easily. I did not see that as an issue here. I thought, in fact, there could use a few more minutes, especially with the sequence with Calypso or the sequences with Calypso, because I think that story mostly gets, very lightly covered. There's not as much uh, engagement in that relationship and the events that are going on there as I thought there might be. And it seems strange to have a actor of the status of Charlize Theron in the part, which is, I don't want to say forgettable, but is certainly light in terms of events. It consists mostly of talking. There is one sequence where they walk on the beach, which is kind of nice. But other than that, I think it's, you know, I think there needed to be some other elements there to make it more interesting and add to the story. So I would have appreciated a few more minutes here and there. There may be a couple of other sequences that could have used a little more time as well. I thought that the pacing got better as yeah, it may be starting out. I won't say it's a slow burn because I do think that there are events that happen early in the film that are engaging, and they didn't put me off the way they seem to have put off other people. But I do think that when we get to the last hour, it is very effective at building energy and creating some tension and moving us through the story efficiently. And we've got a big flashback to the main thing that happened before the journey home that I think is quite invigorating. In fact, one of the things that was encouraging to me many months ago was uh, it wasn't even a trailer so much as it was a special presentation. They showed the sequence of the Trojan horse being uh, being discovered and moved into the city of Troy, and the soldiers coming out of the horse it was like an 8-minute segment that they showed, and I'm trying to remember what it was I saw it with back in December, but it was very exciting, and I thought it did a good job selling the idea of the movie, and that's one of the reasons it created a lot of anticipation for me, and I think for other people in the film community who were looking forward to this movie. In addition to the fact that it's a Christopher Nolan film.
I couldn't believe that I was nervous during that scene in the theater. Like looking back, I'm like, I saw this before. I mean, in I saw Troy. I know about this. So why am I nervous as if this is like a new thing that's happened? I'm like, oh my God, like I hope they don't like see them, but like I know what's going to happen here, but I'm still nervous. That was odd. But again, to speak to what you were saying about being excited.
Yeah. Well, and I think there are a couple other things about that also work. The visualization of the horse is vastly different from what we've seen in other films. It's not something that is, you know, piecemeal put together and on wheels that they roll into the city. It looks like an elegantly carved piece of statuary, and they have to drag it into the city, and they're using log rollers to move it into the city. So you can imagine the arduous nature of hiding inside of that. And they make a slight reference to it. They were in their days, so you know that there were things going on in there that were not going to be pleasant to put up with for a period of time.
And I
So
was fascinated at like the obvious. I mean, it's the kind of thing you don't think about, or at least I never did. And it's like you get this idea, oh yeah, they were hiding inside, and your brain doesn't go to how, right? Like you don't actually think how would a number of men structure themselves into this horse, and seeing them standing one on each other's shoulders, seeing people like Menelaus and Odysseus in the middle, like they're not standing on top of everybody in the head, they're sort of depicted as being in the middle. However, you've got those people on the bottom who, oh, you have to figure what that's like. And then when they're dealing with the tide coming in and people beneath them basically drowning, because
yeah.
where are you going to put? I thought that was really an interesting decision to make, because it's not something I've ever talked about in my classes. I've never had them think about it. It's the kind of thing you discuss when you get into colonial things and you getting into the slave trade. You always talk about it there, but for whatever reason, this has become so mythologized that we only think about the good elements, not the very, very negative parts that you're bringing up, right?
Well,
Like you're in there for a couple of days.
There's a reason for that, because the way that Nolan does the horse is totally different than it's ever been done before.
Right, which I appreciate. I'm like, you know what? I'll take a
Yeah.
different way of doing this. you know, and I mean,
I
it
thought it was,
goes,
why are
some
they
of,
doing it this way? They're burying it in the sand. Why are they doing it where the tide comes in? That it made no sense to me, but
what I've appreciated about what Nolan has done here, and again, I'll get into some of like my favorite element, which really I can't get into until we drop a spoiler wall, which is interesting to think about when you're dealing with a text that's so ancient. But um, I like his take on a lot of this. I like that we're getting into the fact that Odysseus is not exactly the most reliable narrator. He's the one telling us this story, but he's the only one telling us this story. So who's to say he's not changing a couple of things here and there, making himself look better, making other people look better? And so I like the shift that Nolan's taking here. I mean, people are criticizing him for not being historically accurate. People are criticizing him for the language. People are criticizing him for, depiction of this or depiction of that. And for me, I'm finding it interesting because what I love about Nolan is that he's very adept at telling a story in atypical ways. And I like that he's taking a classic that we've all gone through. You've got, a man who goes the ultimate of the Greek heroes, 20 years away from home, and he still, claws his way back and blah, blah, blah. But you're dealing with a man and you're dealing with a group of men, thousands of men who were traumatized from war. Like they went through this awful, awful situation. And it is one of the lesser things, I will say, when they do flashback, as Richard said, back into Troy after they've emerged from the horse. And I do think there's an inconsistency here that we can get into. But you see them emerge from the horse and you see them raging and taking down Troy. But ultimately, you've got men who are leaving their homes. You've got boys who have left their homes, who go into a completely strange area, who are brutalized, who are seeing their friends and their comrades taken down. This is not going to be the kind of thing where people just come home and go, shake it off, it's all good. And that becomes a major part of the story, I think. And that's one of the things I really appreciate. So, yeah, the Trojan horse is going to show. Well, guess what happens after a couple? I mean, frankly, we're talking about Run P. You put men in this thing for a couple of hours, there's going to be some mess, let alone a couple of days.
And since I mentioned the horse and we brought up the look there, I wanted to maybe transition here to other things in the film about the way it looks and how you felt about that. Howard was critical of some of the special effects. Howard, is there something particularly about the way the film looked that maybe was a reservation for you, or is it just everything?
um, well, there were just some times when I could tell, oh, that's green screen. I think, I mean, it's just a matter of disagreement. I think it was poorly edited. The battle scenes and the fight scene at the end were pedestrian and secondhand. I've seen all those scenes done so much better. There was no real emotional connection for me. I didn't care what happened to anybody. They sacked Corey, and it's so vague as to what they do. I mean, I just, a better editor at least. I mean, I don't think Nolan is a good storyteller. I think he comes up with this string ideas and he can be quite visual, but I think his storytelling abilities are quite lacking for me. And I see these battle scenes and I go, well, these are edited not even as good as many other films, that supposedly have directors that people don't think are as good as Nolan. He takes all the emotion and personality out of it for me. I kept having to try to fill in context for things like, is it Calypso? I have no idea what's going on in that scene, or why he's there, or why he's talking to her, or why she cares, anything like that. There's absolutely no context there. He changes one major important plot turn to where I don't even know why it's in the movie because it serves no purpose anymore. It just, I have read that it's all about PTSD, and I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing people experiencing war in such an horrific way that they have PTSD. It's all too vague. It's all too badly edited. It's very sterile. There's no emotion to it to me. I don't know. I'm just rambling, so I'm not sure if I'm going in.
Well, we get a good sense of what your feeling is about it. That's fine. Nicole, what did you think of the look of the film, and did you feel the way that Howard did about some of the battle sequences? Did they just seem too vague or impersonal to you to be engaging or thrilling or make you care about what's going on?
I like I like the film visually. I think I like a lot of the cinematography that was done and a lot of the composition of the scenes. I think that they did a good job of showing us like, a lot of wide shots when it's necessary and then getting up close when things are serious or during like more intimate exchanges between different characters. Visually, I was satisfied with it. The battle scenes, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask this question about because I like action movies. So unless it's too, maybe it's because I didn't find the movie to be cheesy. I I like, sweaty men fighting each other, throwing guys through trees and all of that. Like I like that. And so I was very very satisfied with the battle scenes. Although I did not want a lot of the men to die. And again, like I don't know, I'm not as familiar with the story or with the poem as Elisa, but like I know that these things happen, but even still, maybe it's because it's a movie. I'm watching it and I don't want some of those men to die. I want them to be I want them to be able to make it home, or at least some of them, if not all of them. And I don't know if that's just because of the effect of the movie or also because I have there are veterans in my family who have been in wars, Vietnam, World War II, etc. I have friends or people that I went to school with that have, that are in the military or what have you. And so I've seen I've seen PTSD up close, like as a child, like up close, personal variations of it. I don't know if that played a part, but I did um, feel bad about these guys in that, like, they want, okay, so they, destroyed Troy and now they have to go home, but they can't. It's like they have to endure additional hardships just to get back home. It's as if, for me, it's as if they have to fight an additional war by trying to get back home. So it's like, who really won, and like of what is the cost of the battle at Troy. um Anyhow, I liked it visually. I did care about the guys. I wanted them to get back home. With Calypso, I do agree with Howard in terms of a lack of context early on. I did, because I'm, again, not, I can't like recite the poem like the back of my hand. I'm like, there's a guy on Entertainment Tonight who said it best. He said, he's like most of the kids in America, like in the US. Like he read it in school, didn't pay attention to it, and it was like, let me get through this to to get through my class and like move on. So that was me. I don't remember much. So I don't know the entire story surrounding Calypso. So I was a little lost early on when it came to like why he was there on that beach with her. But then the questions that I had were answered for me later on when they had an exchange and he, told her to like help him get back home, and she gave him, instruction on like how to like just kind of let go and don't try to control his fate, after we find out that she, kept them there, kept him on that beach for 7 years and kept him, you know, in a state where he had like a lot of memory loss, because she wanted, it seemed like Calypso wanted to fulfill her own desires of having him as a husband. And it's like, yeah, okay, chick, I get it. You want the wood, but the wood belongs to Penelope.
Okay.
That's what that's how I interpreted that. So,
Well, I think that it's well known that Nolan plays with time a lot in his movies, and I think that that's one of the things that creates the context issue that both you and Howard mentioned, is that we get filled in on events after we've already started talking about those or seeing those events, and that's a very typical thing that happens in these Nolan films. We see something going on, we're going, what's happening here? And then we flash back to something earlier
yeah, so
that
it was,
happens, but it
yeah.
comes after we've already started on that trail. And I think that happens several places here. And I don't know, I don't remember the structure of the poem well enough to say that Nolan tells things non-sequentially or mixes the chapters up of the original work from Homer. But I suspect that there is a lot of that kind of thing going on, which may create a little bit of confusion here and there. And it certainly seems to have done that with the sequences involving Calypso here. I didn't find that nearly as problematic with some of the other mythological figures that we encounter, Circe and the I'm sorry, what's the name of uh, not Prometheus, Poseidon's son,
Polyphemus, the
Polyphemus, yeah,
Cyclops.
the Cyclops,
Yeah,
and
who's
then
never given his name. He's not given his
no,
name.
they
He
don't say
doesn't.
it in the film,
They
do they?
completely eliminate some of Odysseus's cleverness in that situation where he has the conversation with Polyphemus and he says, who are you? What are you doing in my cave? And Odysseus is wise enough not to give him his real name. He calls himself nobody. But all of that is completely eliminated. In fact, it's not until right before the end where they were like, oh, he can talk, but I don't know if you guys understood a single thing he said, because I couldn't. But the
They
men later
could.
saying,
They mentioned later that that he said he was the son of
right,
Poseidon.
but did you understand that when he was actually speaking?
I didn't,
No,
but
I
you said
didn't.
that no one did, but they,
Right. So that was my question, because I was like, damn it, give me my
yeah, because
captions,
they said
because the
they
men say
understood.
it
That
later.
was my point.
Right. And so I was like, am I supposed to be able to hear him? And so it's, like I wanted
Right.
my caption
No, I
machine,
don't
which
think
I
you
didn't
were
get.
supposed to. No.
Gotcha. So like all of that is sort of eliminate. I mean, that's when I saw Troy, one of my biggest aggravations was that it didn't include the golden apple of discord. I'm an English teacher. I want the mythological elements. I want the gods and goddesses involved. I want all of that brought in. And Troy is more historical. You hear the quotes in my voice.
Yes.
I'm not a history person, so I'm not going to recognize that stuff. But they don't do it here either. I mean, we lose Odysseus's encounter with Aeolus, the god of the wind. We don't have, um, we have suggestions of Zeus and Poseidon. We have suggestions of why the gods have gotten angry at Odysseus and his men for what they've done, pillaging the village just out of Troy, blinding Polyphemus, the Cyclops, and all of these other things. But we don't get that mythological edge. And you know what, I get it. If we're gonna base this in reality, then sure, you're not going to have gods and goddesses appearing to people because they don't. It's just not a thing. um so I found that especially interesting. As far as the effects go, and Howard can come in on this. When you're talking about the Odyssey, I want the monsters. I want to see them. Um, we got glimpses of Scylla. We really didn't get much of the sirens. You kind of sort of see them. We get the Cyclops. I have to say, I was a little bummed. I liked his design. I liked the way his eye is situated. I like this idea of, oh, it's a kind of birth defect. Um, I wanted to see more of Charybdis. I wanted to see more of those kinds of things. But again, if we're going to base this in quote reality, I guess some of the monsters are going to be less interesting. The Lastrygonians were shifted around, and I guess the trees are moving, which I still don't quite get. But um, I don't know. Like, I wasn't taken aback by the way the effects were put together. I appreciate practical effects, and so if you're going to do them in 2026, I'm down for it. Are they the best I've ever seen? No, but it didn't detract from my enjoyment. I will say I think that the 1997 film did the let's see, confrontation of the suitors better than Nolan did. I was actually a little let down by this climactic sequence where Odysseus takes out the suitors, because there
All
wasn't
by
as
him,
well, yeah, because
so
he
which
does
is
that
not the way that happens in the story.
right. Um, I thought the 1997 TV version was more entertaining, is a lot more carnage. Um, I found that more fun than this. Um, but I mean, in general, I was still pretty. I mean, like, I still think it's a great film. Um, but yeah, like, talking about some of those effects and some of the things they do, I did see where there are going to be some green screen elements. I mean, you're not really going to be able to do the Lastrygonians without some of those kinds of elements, and you're not going to really be able to do the Cyclops without some of those elements. I don't know. I was still satisfied with what we saw. I kind of
I
forgot the original question, Richard.
I heard an interview somewhere with Matt Damon where they said that they used, like a six, what is it? Where are my notes? Like a six, I don't know. Where like a 60-foot puppet or something like
Mm-hmm.
that for the Cyclops, and
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah,
they were
he
controlling
would
the
be all
puppet while they had to interact with that. So I think I am more forgiving of, like, maybe affects issues in this film because Nolan tends to apply more like traditional filmmaking methods to his movies rather than solely relying on like modern technology and CGI and things like that. Like, I like that they had real pigs and real 40 sheep, I think, or something, one of them mentioned, which, by the way, that means the lambs also co-star in this film or make a guest appearance in this film. We're in the scene with the
Wait,
Cyclops.
are we sacrificed there in Hades so that they can
No.
talk to them?
uh, that wasn't me. That wasn't me.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of the things that obviously are applicable in any film, the performances in the film. Lisa, you said you were a little hesitant about Matt Damon from the beginning, but you thought he did fine. Why were you hesitant about Matt Damon in this role?
Because it's Matt Damon. I mean, I when I saw Oppenheimer, I didn't see. I don't remember which role he played like a general or somebody. I saw Matt Damon in a military uniform. In fact, that was my complaint about Oppenheimer, is that everybody else disappeared into their roles, and I saw Matt Damon in the military uniform. Um, I did see Odysseus here. Um, I don't know. I think it's because, blonde American actor from Southie. It felt weird. I didn't care for Anne Hathaway as Penelope. I thought she did a fine job. but I don't think that either of them should be getting recognized, in January. I don't think that Robert Pattinson was exceptional, but I think he did an interesting job. What I like about him was that he kind of took this character of Antinous and sort of gave him a little bit extra. I mean, I guess, you talk about the writing giving him a little extra, but Antinous is often just this brash, obnoxious, arrogant jerk who is like inserted himself into the palace and basically feels that he's the one Penelope should choose. Here, he's got some cowardice and some, embarrassing elements, which I kind of liked a lot. I look at Robert Pattinson the way I look at Daniel Radcliffe. It's like, here's a guy who has to sort of break away from what people know him as. And I mean, you got a guy who has to get away from being Twilight. And I think he's done a lot of films where he is getting there, but I still think many people look at him and they think, there's Edward.
That was
there's
me.
the sparkly vampire. The guy he's done The Lighthouse, in which he's fantastic, playing against Willem Dafoe. He's the new Batman. I mean, he can do it. I just don't think he gets the opportunity to. I kind of liked him in this. But again, American actor doing he's even American. I don't even remember if he's British or not, but he does fine. I loved Leguizamo as Eumaeus. I loved him so much. I want to know if his line after Odysseus takes out the suitors, when Eumaeus, the blind shepherd, is in the background and he goes, "Did we win? Is it over?" I want to know if he ad-libbed that line because it's so fantastic. I think he's underrated as an actor. He is my Tybalt. He always will be. I just think he's so good in you say tertiary role. You can't even say secondary. Excuse me for this. He steals the show, I think, in every sequence he's in. I think Tom Holland was good as Telemachus. You do what you can there. I really liked Eurylochus, whose name is escaping me right now for some reason. I thought that things were good. I do agree with you, Richard. I think you said it. Might have been Howard, that Charlize Theron is wasted here. I don't know. Certain things. I think Elliot Page was really good here in a character that you don't get. You have this character of Sinan here incorporated into a major element, and I appreciated it. I liked it. I also, in my weird way, I really liked how Tiresias was brought into it. James Remar throwing in a role that you don't remember him from until you're like, oh yeah, that was him. Okay, cool. I think John Bernthal did a really good job as Menelaus. I was fascinated by Agamemnon, which is, I think, the point. I don't know quite what to do with him because I feel like he's
I need the percent of his performance was his helmet.
Yes, and it's like, and he's the poster. And I think there's something interesting to what's going on there with the image of that spine on his helmet and the idea that he's the one really driving into this, and he's the one pushing for this war for his brother's wife. I think that Lupita Nyong'o was good. I think both of the roles of Helen and Clytemnestra are good. Do I think that the role would be different with somebody else in there? No. I was also kind of entertained with Mia Goth as Melanthe because she gets it in the end, and I don't care much for Mia Goth. So I was kind of like, you get your end and you get your revenge in the end. Which many people don't agree with me about Mia Goth, but I'm fine with that. I liked the performances. I think if Matt Damon gets a nomination, I think if Anne Hathaway gets nominated, I don't think they're going to win because I don't think they deserve to win.
I said that deserving to win has never been or rarely been a reason why someone wins or doesn't win an Oscar.
Yeah, but I don't think either of them will win either.
No, I don't either.
Oh, I'm not. It's a little early to wager on it. I see talk about things, and I know that Lisa doesn't look ahead, so I don't want to step on anything by projecting. But I
Well, I'll
think we've
throw a
got.
quick projection out there. The kid who's playing Sylvester Stallone and I play Rocky already has my attention.
Oh, I love that. I
More
lo
than these two. I mean,
And by the way, didn't watch the trailer, did you?
no, but I could hear him.
Okay. Well, I'm not. Let's not get into that. That's a little weird. You can hear it, but you're
Yeah,
not seeing it.
right.
Does
But
that
because well,
does
I
that
can hear him.
matter?
Yes, because I'm a visual person in general.
I just wanted to know if there were any other thoughts on any of the performers, because Lisa's, you know, not
Yeah, right
dismissive of
on.
Matt Damon and Anne Hathaway, but she's certainly not embracing them the way a lot of people have. I see talk about Matt Damon, not only being nominated but winning, being clearly the
No,
best performance of the year.
I like
Uh,
him. I
I
do.
thought
I
I
like
thought he
him.
was very good. I'm not sure I would have called it the best performance
I
of the
my
year. Go ahead,
Come on,
Howard.
Howard. Come on.
well, my issues with the acting were, I think, are a little different. I'm not sure it's the actor's fault. We have some very good actors in it. We have some mediocre actors in it. Um, Elliot Page, I agree, probably gave the best performance in the movie, but the actors were let down by, for me, a weak script, and also there's there's a movie called Morning Becomes Electra by adapted from Eugene O'Neill's play, and it stars Raymond Massey Jr., Katina Paxtonel, Michael Redgrave, and Russell and Russell. And what Pauline Kael said about it, that it is apparent from their accents that they have only recently become a family. And the anachronistic accents just, I couldn't get past. Nobody sounded alike. Nobody sounded like they came from the same background or the same family. Uh, I've seen this on stage too, where I'm going, get your act together. These were all family. They should have the same accent. These are all the same background. They all should have the same accent. People laugh at the idea that usually you use these posh English accents for this, but the advantage is they all sound like they come from the same place. They all sound like they come from the same family when you do that. Here, it's just helter-skelter. I think Robert Pattinson is one of our best actors today, but give me Anthony Quinn from Ulysses any day of the week. I thought that worked much better in that movie. Um, I One of the funniest things I thought is a lot of funny things I thought, but they said Tom Holland says, "When you come of age," and I'm going, if he hasn't come of age yet, then Odysseus
Yeah, he's like
couldn't have been
1920.
his father. So I'm not sure what's going on there, you know. And so if 21 is he's almost coming from age, I'm going, no, something's off there. Though usually coming of age would be
You missed the
18.
boat,
So
kid.
yeah, even
I
21
think
when
coming of age in those days in those stories usually means assassinating your father and taking over the throne.
well, that's yes,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not
not
gonna
wrong there either.
argue with that at all. Um, I think Anne Hathaway, yeah, it's all I couldn't listen to them. I thought they needed to get someone in.
I'm going to go the opposite direction on a couple of these things, just because I think we need to have other views on this. I appreciated the fact that we didn't have 20 people speaking English accents trying to indicate that they all came from the same place. Since we don't have anybody who looks like they came from the same place in the movie, and since I don't care about what people look like, I'm not particularly harsh on how they speak either, as long as the lines that they're speaking are effective. My reservation had to do with the language issues that are in the script
Oh
that
yeah,
that are very
I agree.
minor. The one that people were bitching about ahead of time, using the term daddy and dad, it's like that does seem like a sore thumb sitting right there, because the language was, you know, and it's not really important, but it takes you out of the film a little bit. And I think that there are a couple of other things that do the same sort of thing. Uh,
When Tom Holland says, "Okay," I went, "Oh God."
yeah, we got an okay, and we got a let's go or something like that was going on. I'm going, this, this doesn't sound like it would be the dialogue that would be delivered. But uh, it was minor in detail. The casting issues that I saw people complaining about, I didn't think they were as egregious or problematic as some people suggested. And Lupita Nyong'o, for instance, is in the film for a total of what, 4 minutes? I
Yeah,
mean,
I
she is
mean,
literally, uh, you talk about a tertiary character. She's a tertiary character in this
yeah.
film. And
The
she
BS
was
about
fine.
her
Nobody cares
race and
about.
all this other stuff, that made me insane. Like that is
Well, yeah,
completely irrelevant.
I don't think that ended up mattering one bit.
Agreed.
The point that I think is being made here is that, and I thought that Nolan, he says it at one, I forget which character says it at one point, that it's not really about Helen and her decision to leave or be kidnapped, whichever way you want to look at it. This was an excuse for Agamemnon and others to attack Troy and
Hmm.
take over the trade routes, and that was just and the idea that this is the face that launched 1,000 ships, the most beautiful woman, and she's got a twin sister, you know.
Yep.
Okay, so apparently not all that unique. It's just that's I think an interesting way of going at this. That it really puts it into that more I don't want to say realistic context, but it gives it some more gravitas than it would have had otherwise if it was really just about the loss of this beauty, which is then, of course, disfigured. Um, the there is a I know that there is a slight difference in the way the Agamemnon's wife and the murder took place and the motivation on all that. I think that's all a little different from what the original poem was, but it worked perfectly fine. As a script change, I understand that you're going to make, it's an adaptation. It's not, we're not doing the poem. We're doing an adaptation of the poem, and that works fine. So I didn't find the accents problematic, and I thought Pattinson was great. And Leguizamo and Pattinson to me are the two people who are the best in the film, with one exception that nobody has mentioned so far, and that's
Samantha
Argos.
Morton. Oh, well, Argus is
Argos,
good too.
Argos is the best in the film.
Oh my
You know,
God. He was just so darling. I didn't like the kicking. The kicking went on too long. I'm like, I don't need all of this. I get it. They suck. I just was like, oh, but oh my God, Argus being in there and doing his thing. I loved that so much. I was just waiting for that
and
wonderful
by the
Argus
way,
moment.
we're past spoiler
Yeah,
territory. Anybody who's listening, so we are going to be talking about things that might be spoilery, assuming that you haven't read the ancient poem or studied it in class at school or seen one of the dozen other movies that are based on this material.
right.
Uh, you know, Odysseus does get home,
Yep.
and the
And
suitors.
Argus waits for him. Oh my
That
God.
that to me was the most moving scene in the movie.
Oh, it was
When
so great.
the dog expires when Odysseus gets back. It was
Hmm.
like he waited for him. He held on, and I thought that was I like I said, I'm an animal person, so it's just one of those things that goes on. I react to that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Um,
Not in the TNT version, which
so
has always
they
made me crazy. I'm like, why is this not in here? It's so
how
simple.
frustrating. Uh, so I'm like I said, and I thought most of the performers were solid, with here or there an exception. I don't want to get into any of that kind of stuff because
I think
it's
we need to talk
too
about Samantha
distracting.
Morton, though, because I mean, I
Yes,
was remiss
yes.
in not bringing her up earlier.
Well, that sequence is the creepiest scene in the movie, and it is well
Horrifying.
done, I think.
Yes.
I thought it was very well performed by the guys who were anxiously eating the food, and by her manipulation of their bodies into swine. I just thought that was, if we're going to present this phantasmagorical element here and try to portray it on screen, this is a pretty good way of doing it without simply doing a wipe across the screen.
I mean, I loved her depiction of Cersei. I have not read the novel Cersei. I tend to get icky when it comes to retellings of things. Not necessarily adaptations, but like, oh, we're going to do this story from somebody else's point of view. So I haven't read it yet. Now I want to, based on Morton's performance. But this concept of both Cersei and Calypso, who it's interesting because you're right, Calypso always kind of, gets the short end of the stick when we talk about discussing this poem and discussing this story and the adaptations of it. And it's interesting because you've got kids who are 14 years old. Oh, okay, so let's talk about the sorceress who messes with Odysseus and his men, and her name begins with C. It's like, damn it, how the hell am I going to help these kids tell these people apart? You're right, Calypso tends to get the short end of the stick, because Cersei is fascinating to people, and I love this concept of her as a woman who has been abused, who has been taken advantage of over and over again. And she's doing this kind of as a self-defense, right? Like you think about the way it's usually put out there, and she's this sorceress, and she's this witch, and she's doing this to the men because she can, and she's diabolical. And this, I loved the line when, Odysseus pushes her to change them back into their human form. And she's murmuring, like, put your mask back on, put your costume back on. And I just thought that line was so interesting for who she is. She doesn't live in this palace. She lives in this stone cabin, hut. What do you call
Yeah.
this thing? Like she's sort of isolated.
Stone yurt.
Yeah. And it's she's living in there alone. It's a small thing, and she's just sort of, you can tell that other men have come, and who knows what they've done to her. And just her way in her portrayal was so interesting to me that I'm very excited. Like, if I were to show nothing else from this film, I would show her, because her portrayal of this character and what Nolan has decided to do with Cersei is so interesting, I think, and very different from, what the watered down literature books will give you. I mean, she's not Bernadette Peters, she's not singing beautiful songs and all of her handmaidens and tempting and seducing the men and bringing them in with sex. Like, Cersei was one of the ones I was afraid of in this film. And oh, my mind has been changed.
All right. What other scenes or sequences should we talk about before we wrap this up?
Well, the one that I thought was the most laughable and didn't work for me, and I don't understand why he bothered putting it in if he wasn't going to do anything with it, were, oh gosh, what are their names? The Laestrygonians?
The Laestrygonians, yes.
Yeah. They go in, they see these huge knights in armor, and all I thought was, I just wanted someone to yell out, "Run away, run away."
Look out for the shrubberies.
They serve no
Which then
purpose in this movie.
try to
They serve
pin
a
them
very
in.
important purpose. Yes. They serve
That
a very
was the
important purpose in the
weakest.
original story, but serve no purpose here.
Yes,
Uh,
agreed.
Yeah.
It was just weird. It was like, oh, we need to get this one in here, and I've got 5 minutes for it. Go. Like, it was, I agree with you, Howard. It was like, I liked the kid, and I was like, okay, all right, I see where you're going. So it's like, all right, let's go. And the Laestrygonians are cannibals. Like, they're supposed to eat them. They're supposed to bring them back to their king. They're supposed
And
to
they destroy all of Ulysses'
ships,
Yeah.
yeah, with these rocks. Like, this is a scene where, like, he all of the ships go right up to the land, and they're in a cove, and they're throwing these giant rocks and destroy. None of that. It's this thing with moving trees. It was so strange. I agree with you, Howard, on that.
Yeah, I mean, in this movie, he only has 3 ships, but doesn't he have like a dozen ships originally?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where he loses
Yep.
all but one of them.
Yep. Because he leaves his ship outside the cove.
Yeah. He always manages to be someplace else.
And see, there's the unreliable narrator thing. Yeah, totally.
Well, Howard, I know, sees no point in the film. Do either of you see themes that you think Nolan was trying to get to?
Oh, can we talk about Athena for a minute?
Sure.
I love the fact that Athena is not Athena. Athena is this manifestation of this guilt that he has.
Ah, yes.
I loved that so much
Yes.
because you have no Zeus, you have no Poseidon, you have no Aeolus. I'm like, why is he seeing Athena? Why does she get to be in it? And then when you get to the end and like her face is actually the face of this girl that they beheaded in Troy, and is it a little silly? Yes. Is it a little ham-fisted? Absolutely. Do I care? Not a little bit. Because it's this cool way of going, here's why he's seeing her as Athena, here's why he's seeing her. I loved that so much, this concept that the gods don't exist except how we manifest them. And I thought that was really interesting for a mythological classic.
Well, the whole thing that Odysseus is talking about at the end of the film, that about how they've destroyed civilization because they violated Zeus's rule about
Mm-hmm.
basically the golden rule and treating guests in a particular way, and how this kind of is indicative of his connection with, like you said, Zeus does not appear in the film, and the other gods don't show up, and they've heard rumors of these things. They get messages from beyond. They have omens, and they have conversations with the dead that provide them with this kind of information. But that's kind of the foundation of their civilization there, that it
Mm-hmm.
operates under certain rules, and they have, I think the guilt that comes from violating that is really the crux of him seeing that girl as Athena, and following up with everything that happens in the rest of the story, because we consistently find that rule being violated by all kinds of the beings that they encounter and by themselves. So as a result, you can see why there is this concern about how civilization could easily tip just on the basis of it failing to observe this one principle in a regular way. And I thought that was very effective. I appreciated that. And I'm not taking sides in the Trojan War, but as a Trojan myself, fight on. Uh, I do see a little bit of that violation of trust. We've left you a gift of peace in leaving, and it really becomes the instrument for your downfall and destruction through deception. And deception is a part of this story everywhere. So I think there are themes about loyalty and deception, and of course the so-called golden rule, or the Zeus's rule, that are being talked about here, that I think give this story a lot of substance in the context of a film. Now, they may not be the things that were the important things in the poem, but they were the things that I thought stood out to me, at least in the film.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. You talk about the deception, and one of those things that always comes up when I discuss this with my students is this idea that Odysseus expects Penelope to be true to him, and yet he's sleeping with anybody that walks in
Oh
the
my
poem.
God, yes, I'm sorry. I'm so
And
glad you
it's
touched up on this,
yeah.
Lisa, because I felt like again, and I didn't read the poem, so I don't know all the details, but I recently, in making my notes for the Lambcast, uh certain things that I learned or relearned
Mhm.
made the movie seem kind of misogynistic for me. Like, I read something somewhere where like Cersei's mentioned as a lover. Now I
Yep.
didn't see that in the movie, so I didn't
Not
know
in
that.
there at
And I'm
all.
like, wait a minute, Cersei was a lover? So you mean to tell me Penelope is just like waiting for him for years while
Mhm.
he's just slinging the wood around? Now, not to say that he's a
Slinging the
bad
wood.
a bad husband, but like, he's getting his needs met during
Mhm.
his journey to get back to Penelope, and all the while she's just waiting for him while trying to hold off all of these crazy like suitors. I was like, man, this sounds kind of misogynistic. But then I also remembered the fact that, hey, it's an ancient tale, so like based on the time that it was set in, it makes sense to me. Like,
Let, let,
Yeah,
don't
I understand. I
let
but
us
understand.
not
see,
forget also that Penelope is dealing with human suitors, whereas Odysseus is dealing with gods and demigods. And
Oh
so there
yeah, like
is,
he's really suffering though, because
well, no,
he's
not that he's suffering, but his power to resist is going to be minimal compared to
eh,
uh, others.
Ah,
I'll
I
give you
don't.
that on
But that's the
Calypso. I'm
original
not giving you
yeah.
that
story.
on Cersei.
Well, that's the
Well,
original story.
Cersei, of course, doesn't apply in the film, but in the book, in
Right.
the poem, it would apply.
It would
Right.
apply, but because he uses it as a tool against her. Because like she's supposed to come at her, he gets, that's again another place where a god has been eliminated. Hermes appears to Odysseus and gives him this herb moly that would make him impervious to her sorcery, so that when she tries to change him assumedly into a pig, he won't. And so like the deal she makes with him is, I'll help you get home if you stay and be my lover. And he's all like, sure. Like it's not like he's exactly resisting. But there again, it's you have this man telling this story. Now I'm not throwing the Greeks out with the bathwater here, because the Greeks are the ones who gave us Lysistrata, where the women are the one who say, you know what, I'm sick of you men being off at war, we're withholding sex until you stop. And they get, the men are like groveling ridiculous like weaklings because they can't get any anymore. It's fascinating how this is all put together. But yeah, it's like, it's always been an interesting thing because the kids come up with it first. I never have to bring it up. They all go, hang on a minute. She has to stay pure for him, and he's doing this, that, and the other thing. And it's always hilarious to me. I just let them go.
Well, having felt like I was one of the students in your class being let go here a minute ago, let's wrap this up with our final thoughts on the film. Howard, we're going to start with you because your final thoughts are probably going to be distinct from everybody else's.
Oh, just that I think it's one of the worst films I've seen in some time, and nothing works about it.
And you saw one battle after another.
And I love
What was the other one
it.
you
I
dumped
think
on
the
recently?
best
There was something
film of
that
the year. So
we both,
yeah.
oh, The Bride, The Bride.
Oh
Was I
yeah.
on that episode?
Actually, I guess I like the this better than The Bride. I will admit that.
Okay, so it's not the worst film of the year, it's the second worst
Yeah.
film of the year.
Maybe.
Progress.
No, I don't think so, Lisa.
I liked that movie. I thought that was fun.
No, and then I know that you weren't on the show. Nicole, how about you?
I don't really have any final thoughts. There's a lot to talk about Robert Pattinson. I am someone who, has always seen him as the guy from Twilight. So I've never taken him seriously. So I am pleasantly surprised that he held his own in this movie. And now I can think of him as an actual like actor who can like do things. And so
Well,
kudos to
if
him.
you really
It's been
want to
good in
see a
other
movie where he
things
does
too,
things,
but they're
see The
probably
Rover.
just things you haven't seen.
See the
See
what,
which
The
one?
Howard?
Rover is the one that will
The,
change your opinion of it.
the Elder,
The Rover.
the Rover. Oh.
Yeah.
Throw the lighthouse in there too, although that one you may end up turning off partway off
No,
because
no,
it's
no,
not
no,
Yeah.
easy to
no,
watch. You
no,
shush, Richard.
no, 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 don't see The Lighthouse. Save
I
yourself
agree with
the
Richard.
misery.
Uh-oh.
Watch the
No, Robert,
Batman then. He's fun in that.
Right.
Robert
Oh,
Right.
Pattinson
wait, I should have,
has
because that's the one Zoe's in, right? Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've seen the Batman.
And
I saw the Batman.
Tenet has its issues, but Robert Pattinson is not one of the issues. He's very good in
right.
that as well.
Very
Yeah.
good. It was the best thing in Tenet, and though I could only watch half of it or a third of it, and I said, I'm out of here.
Lisa, you got some final thoughts?
I need to go back, and I'm interested in rewatching it because now I'm going to watch it for the next 20 years, twice a year. But the idea that I want to see how Odysseus is portrayed again in the beginning scenes of Troy versus the end of the film when we go back and he's walking around as if he's never been in war and he's like, oh, this is not good. Because I seem to remember him being fully on board with, we're going to pillage and destroy this place. And then at the end, he's all like somber about it. So I don't know. I have to give that another look. But in general, I mean, I'm happy with it because I like another version. I like an alternative to the one. You know, as English teachers, we are hard pressed to find both good adaptations and adaptations 14-year-olds will watch. Um, and so I'm happy that this
Well,
is
Lisa,
existing.
I have a question for you then. Is there a reason why you don't show Ulysses?
I've actually not had access to it, so now I'm going to go get it.
Yeah, it's with Kirk Douglas.
Yeah,
Um,
I like Arma Desante. Um, I like that version. I've shown bits of like the Percy Jackson because I think the way they do Scylla and Charybdis is interesting. I'm entertained showing the kids a film from 1997 to say, look at this CGI, it's not bad. Because like Poseidon is in it. Those kinds of things. I will go grab some Ulysses and take a look at it. Um, so thank you for that.
All right, and I'm going to just say that I think this is a very good film. Unlike Howard, I think it's not only well made, but also, to me, it was intriguing and kept me engaged for 3 hours. And when you can keep me engaged for 3 hours, I think that you've done what you need to do. And I think that I don't have the problems that were pointed out. I do have reservations that I think other people will probably not see the same way, but they the reservations I had were not enough to distract me from anything that was in the movie in the long run. And like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing it a second time. All right, we're going to take a quick break here to hear from a fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then we'll be back for our exit question of the week.
In a world where podcasts already seem to address every imaginable subject, one man broke new ground with a seemingly random obsession about exploding helicopters in movies. He was a podcaster on the edge, a maverick broadcaster who played by his own rules. Now, he has a last chance to talk about the strange way helicopters explode in film. Exploding Helicopter, available on iTunes and Podomatic now. Think you know about chopper fireballs? Think again.
We're back, and it's time for us to get to the exit question of the week. We're finishing up the show. The exit question this week is pretty straightforward. It's inspired by the film that we watched. Is there a fantasy sword and sandal film that you can recommend? In other words, something that would be comparable to The Odyssey in terms of its scope, themes, effects, storytelling, that sort of thing. And then as a bonus, can you tell us your favorite Christopher Nolan film? So it's a two-part exit question. And Howard, we're going to start with you. Have you got a recommendation of a sword and sandal type film?
Well, I kept trying to come up with something that wouldn't be obvious and had a difficult time coming up with it. I'm going to go a little rogue here and recommend a foreign film called Iphigenia by Michael, I think it's Kokianis, which is about the death of Iphigenia, the sacrifice of Iphigenia, which was the original sin in the Trojan War. It's a beautiful and very powerful story that sets up what eventually happens to Agamemnon when he comes home.
All right. We'll come back to your Nolan film in a second. Lisa, how about you? What have you got to recommend that would fit into that genre that we're talking about?
I mean, Howard's talking about being obvious. I don't think anybody's going to be more obvious than me on this because it's not my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not really into these kinds of films. So I'm going to Gladiator. I mean, I feel like that is sort of the pinnacle of the contemporary swords and sandals kind of epic film. I think it's exceptional. I love all the performances in that one. I think Gladiator 2 is fodder for Mystery Science Theater 3000 with the shark battle. But that first one, I mean, it's just so wonderfully done, and the music is amazing, and all of the elements in there. So I'm going to go obvious because it really is the only answer I have.
Fair enough. And Nicole, how about you? Did you find something, or do you have something from your memory or background that you could recommend?
Yes. I initially wanted to throw the Battle of Algiers out there, but I figured I would go with like some indie films or little known films. One, I cannot pronounce it. It starts with a U, so I want to say it's like Yuki Sarangitara. The English title is Wrong Husband. It's a Canadian film directed by, I think, Zachary Kunuk. Last name is spelled Kunuk. It's a historical drama with like some fantasy elements in it, I guess. It's about these two this one village of like indigenous people in Canada, and like these two babies, male and female, their families promise the babies to each other like at birth. So like there's an arranged marriage there. And as the babies grow up, they get to know each other and make plans for their future. Well, the daughter's father dies, and when he dies, a man comes from like another village or what have you, and her mother is in, I guess we were talking about the Odyssey, like Penelope's situation. She has to marry, I guess, another man, and it's not her choice, I guess, in their culture or what have you. So basically this man wants the mother as the wife. She can't say no, so she's gonna go with him to his new village, as well as the daughter. So now the daughter's like, well, I was promised to the boy. The boy's name is Sapa. Sapa and I, like, we're supposed to be together. The mother's like, well, this is what we have to do. So the movie then becomes this whole like journey where Sapa is trying to find the daughter, the wife that he was promised at birth. And it there's a conflict of like, is he going to be able to make it and find her or not before the sons in the other village try to marry her, because the daughter now has suitors in the other village, and they are disgusting, mean, cruel bastards, in my opinion, not in her opinion. And so that's one. And then there's another short film called Lacrimosa from Germany. I want to swing back. Wrong Husband is available on like Apple TV, I think. Lacrimosa is the Germany short. It's available on YouTube now. I think they put it out, but it's been in film festivals years ago. The premise reads: the young girl Mila wakes up in an unknown world full of mysteries. On her journey through ever-changing surreal landscapes, she meets her long-lost lover, Theo. And Mila has to learn that love also means to let go. This movie was shot entirely underwater, I think. And it's interesting.
All right. Well, I thought I was going to be obvious, and you guys didn't, pick obvious things at all. So I am being obvious. I'm going with the film that inspired Christopher Nolan to do The Odyssey, because he wanted to make a Ray Harryhausen film. I'm going to go with the Ray Harryhausen Jason and the Argonauts, which I think is a terrific film. Set in the same kind of mythological world that we're seeing here in The Odyssey, with different heroes and some other gods that play a part, and we have similar but different monsters that we encounter, and the special effects in this are completely different from the special effects that we get here. Howard would probably say that they're a little clunky and they don't look good. I know you wouldn't say that because he probably likes Harryhausen too. Yeah, so there you go. But there's no CGI here. It's all, stop motion animation for most of those things. And I think it
Oh
looks
no, I think they
spectacular,
look
and
incredible.
it's been a film that I remember
Yeah.
seeing as a kid, and I've seen several times since then. And it's another one of those ones that I could go back to anytime and enjoy. So, and I know that Nolan was, in part inspired to make The Odyssey because of his love for Harryhausen, and Jason and the Argonauts is a good example of that. All right, well, let's get to the second part of the question. We've got Christopher Nolan. He's made a dozen films or so. You got a favorite in that list? And let's kind of go backwards here. Nicole, let's start with you. Have you got a favorite Christopher Nolan film?
Uh, yes, I do. There are a few Christopher Nolan films that I don't think I've watched. So it was hard to answer this question. It's like, should I try to watch his entire like filmography first? But The Dark Knight is it for me. I haven't finished Memento, so
Well, you have to start it again every 10 minutes.
yeah, so it's like Psycho, one of those movies where I turned it on and then I turned it back off. So I never finished that. But The Dark Knight is always going to be a favorite of mine. Besides being a Batman lover, I like the different worlds he created with Inception, but I will watch just about any Batman movie. So Batman usually is always going to come out on top no matter what, no matter what we're talking about. And I like that with Heath Ledger being, what is it, like a method actor? I think that's what they call it. I think that everything went well in The Dark Knight. And it's a movie I can watch multiple times and not tire of it. And as someone who has watched the movie Taken when I had like some technical issues with like my TV and DVD setup years ago, I watched Taken every day, and then I watched The Lord of the Rings every single day because I couldn't get like television or other channels. So I have endurance when it comes to watching movies on repeat. The Dark Knight is just, that's my Christopher Nolan favorite. If I'm gonna watch one of his films, it would be that.
All right. Howard, let's go with you next. Have you got a Nolan film that you would say is your favorite?
I had two comments about the previous question. One is I purposely didn't choose Jason and the Argonauts because I thought someone else would definitely choose that. So thank you, Richard, for choosing that. And you could probably add Clash of the Titans to that as well. When I was a kid, I know I've said this on the show before, there was a theater that had a kids matinee every Saturday, and it was one of three things. It was a Hammer horror film, a monster film from Japan, or a sword and sandal epic with Hercules. And I can barely remember the Hercules ones, but they did show Jason and the Argonauts. So yes, thank you for Jason and the Argonauts. It's still an incredibly watchable film. My favorite of Nolan's is Memento. I don't think he's ever done better, though he's come closest with Insomnia and The Dark Knight Rises. As I said, I think he comes up with really good concepts and has an interesting visual style, but he's not very good at telling stories.
All right. Lisa, have you got a storytelling film that can counter Howard from Christopher Nolan?
Well, my favorite is Memento. I teach the short story that Jonathan Nolan wrote, and I show the film twice a year, every year for the last 22 years.
When you said that earlier, I knew immediately what you were talking about.
It's Memento. It's Memento. I mean, my God. I remember seeing that movie in the theater and having my mind blown and just being like, yep, yep. But it's funny because like you bring up Inception, and I sat in Inception and said, how can I teach this one too? Um, I love what he does. In fact, it's funny that Howard brings up Insomnia. I need to go back and watch it because I hated it. In fact, I always forget that that's Nolan. That's a film that made me crazy because you've got
It's
these
very
brilliant
different from his other
actors.
films. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. But I didn't like the film at all. Like, for example, The Prestige, everybody loves, but in the first 5 pages of the novel, the trick is revealed. So I was sitting there watching the movie going, wait, you guys didn't know that? And it was like, oh, this did not land for me at all. But I know why that didn't land for me. I need to go back and watch Insomnia because I remember Al Pacino and Robin Williams. You've got these incredible actors in roles that you could have put anybody else in there and the movie would have been the same. And I need to go back and give it another look now that it's been however many years since it came out, because I've only seen it the one time. But Memento, I think, is so wonderful for so many reasons. And Nicole, it was like a hit to the head when you were like, I turned it on and they turned it off. Um, I just think it's wonderfully made. My students, it lands for them. I love the dual narrative. I was actually a co-host for a podcast on it. Um, it was just, it's one of those films that I think is crafted so well. I do love the way the story is put together. I also am a sucker for an unreliable narrator at any point. Um, I think that some of it is just so entertainingly funny. Like my favorite scene is when Leonard is running through the trailer park and he's like, "So what am I doing?" "Oh, I'm chasing this guy." And he's like, "No, he's chasing me." It is my favorite thing every single time I see that film. I have the same jokes that I make at certain points when I show it to my seniors. It's just, I think it's just so wonderfully done. And I go to Inception as well. I think Inception's narrative layering is very cool. And I love the concept of, I think it's because it fits very much into my aesthetics of, I'm an Alice in Wonderland girl. I love this concept of Pan's Labyrinth, this idea of like there is a world just beyond what we can perceive if you can just find the right tear. And so films like that always get my attention. And yeah, so I am. I'm a Nolan fangirl. I do like his Dark Knight. I like his version of it. I still insist that The Dark Knight Rises was the better superhero film that summer. But I'm a villains girl. I want the villains. Don't give me a bunch of heroes, snarking at each other, the Avengers. But anyway, um, yeah, I there's so many things I could say about Memento, but I've talked enough in this episode, and Richard really just wants to get off the recording, so I'm going to
Well,
stop.
at the risk of belaboring the recording and adding a little bit to the memento, it's interesting that you bring the film to your students. Memento came to me through a student. In my argumentation class, I had them do a claim of value at one point, and I always discouraged them from doing arguments about aesthetic values, artistic things, because I said that's really one of those things that often is, problematic because the values are subjective there. But I had a student who had seen the movie and talked about it. He was very creative in the way he described it. And it was in theaters at the time that he was talking about it. And that was what made me go and see the movie, is this presentation in class. And
I
I
love
thought,
it.
like I said, I generally discourage that kind of presentation, but his work, he did a good job presenting his criteria for what makes this movie a good movie, a film that's worthwhile, what makes it artistic in its endeavors. And so I was happy to have Memento on my list of Nolan films. Eh, By the way, I have seen all the Nolan films because we did a summary presentation on Nolan. It's maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and everybody wanted to see them all, so I did, and they're all very good, by the way. I haven't been disappointed in any of them. I'm sorry, Howard's been disappointed in them, but mine is going to be a little bit different. You would think, with my background, that The Prestige would be my favorite. After all, I come from a family that is steeped in the world of magic, and I knew some of the things that were being talked about there. Um, we had Ricky Jay to dinner one night when I was a kid, and it was a very memorable experience. Listening to people talk about those kinds of things was always something that, I'd be interested in. However, I I'm going to go with the technical story accomplishment, the one where he uses time the most effectively and in a way that made it was clear to me what was going on, despite the fact that he's playing with time, and that's Dunkirk, where the story is basically told over the perspective of an hour, a day, and a week. And you can tell by the way the story is being integrated and the way those elements have been put together which part of each story that you're in as you're going along. And even though it might be confusing, I thought it was structured really well and made the film incredibly compelling. And if you ever want to see a movie where a defeat turns into victory, this is the one to be seeing because it's a perfect example about how, figuring a way out and continuing the fight is sometimes more important than winning the fight. And I just thought it was an excellent film, well made. And like I said, if I had to pick another film to watch again, I'm looking forward to seeing Interstellar later this month. I'm hoping that I'm going to get a chance to see that. All the IMAX screenings that we had for our Paramount Summer Classic Film Series are sold out, but there's a chance that they're going to add a fifth show. We'll see. But I would see Interstellar again too. But I would see Dunkirk first. All right. I want to give everybody a chance to share anything that they think the audience might be interested in listening to, seeing, reading. Howard, I know that you've started a new podcast and you still only got one episode in. We're supposed to do the next episode. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your new program?
Well, it's Stumblebum, which is revolves around movies that I just stumbled upon that I'd never heard of, that I had no familiarity with, and then I bring on someone to talk about it with me.
Nicole, have you got anything that's active or something that we might want to check out?
Only a correction. I would like to correct myself. I mentioned the wrong movie earlier. I said that I just realized I said that I watched Taken every day. Wrong heist movie. I meant The Town. Sorry, Ben Affleck. I watched The Town.
Okay, we'll make sure that The Town gets appropriate kudos here on the Lambcast. All right, and Lisa, how about you?
So I basically right now am only showing up as guests on other people's podcasts. But hey, if you wanted to go back and listen to me co-hosting a sequence by sequence podcast about Memento, I co-hosted that with Bubba Wheat and another pal of his, Eric, and each of us basically get our own section. So I was the co-host for all of the black and white sections. Eric was the co-host for the colored sections. And if you go to Spotify and you look for Bubba Wheat's podcast, It's Time to Rewind. And if you include in your search, It's Time to Rewind Memento, they should pop up pretty easily. What's really great in that sequence is that we had the opportunity to speak with Stephen Tobolowsky, who played Sammy Jenkins in the film. And that was a huge delight to actually get to chat with him. So that would be something to go back and check out.
And as for me on my site, I'm still struggling to catch up. I finally just posted reviews, or not even reviews, brief comments about two films that I saw nearly a month ago when the Paramount Theater was closing for its renovation, Singing in the Rain and Raiders of the Lost Ark, two films that I've written about extensively in the past. So I didn't make a long post on either of them, just enough to kind of keep up. I still have some things to catch up on. I am going to get to my Shepherd's Pie. I just have been traveling and I'm so far behind on things that it's probably not going to come out until next month instead of this month when it should have. But I'm happy to be continually busy with the Lambcast, and I'm glad that all of you were able to make it this week. Thank you very much, and I hope that your journey home doesn't take you an extra 10 years this week.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
Ha 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 ha